Are you a fan of true crime stories? Do you love hearing about notorious mobsters who rose to power in the United States? Then you're in for a treat. Today we'll be diving into the brutal true story of Carlo Gambino, one of the most influential crime bosses of his era. Gambino's cunning and inconspicuousness earned him a place at the head of the Gambino crime family, one of 5 families that controlled organized crime in New York City. From his humble beginnings as a stowaway to his rise as the boss of all bosses, Gambino's story is filled with twists and turns that will leave you on the edge of your seat. So sit tight, grab some popcorn, and let's get started with this gripping tale. Carlo Gambino, an Italian-American mobster, gained in notoriety as the leader of the Gambino crime family, one of 5 families that controlled organized crime in New York City. He ascended to power during the 1950s and 1960s and was renowned for his cunning and inconspicuousness. Following Vito Genovese's incarceration, Gambino took over the Commission, the governing body responsible for overseeing organized crime across the United States. Gambino was recognized as one of the most influential crime bosses of his era and was distinguished for his ability to remain under the radar. He was imprisoned for only 22 months on a tax evasion charge in 1937. In 1976, at the age of 74, Gambino died of a heart attack after successfully establishing one of the largest and most potent criminal syndicates in the United States. Born into a family associated with the Passo di Regano Sicilian mafia gang in Palermo, Sicily, Italy on August 24, 1902, Gambino made his way to the United States as a stowaway on December 23, 1921, arriving in Norfolk, Virginia. He later joined his cousins, the Castellanos, in New York City and found work with a small trucking company owned by his uncle's family. Eventually, he moved to Brooklyn and married Catherine Castellano, his cousin and sister of Paul Castellano, in 1932. Gambino was a member of a criminal organization led by Joe Masseria and was arrested in Lawrence, Massachusetts in 1930 on suspicion of wrongdoing. Although the charge was dismissed, he was apprehended again a month later in Brockton, Massachusetts, for larceny. After failing to appear in court, a warrant was issued for his arrest. He was finally captured 4 years later in Manhattan, the fugitive, and taken back to Brockton, where he made restitution of $1,000 and the larceny charge was dropped. The Castellamar clan was led by Salvatore Maranzano, who came from Sicily and became Masseria's primary competitor. In the early 1930s, their rivalry resulted in the Castellamar War. Masseria and Maranzano were known as Mustache Peaks because they were older, traditional mafia bosses who adhered to the principles of honor, tradition, respect, and dignity that were thought to characterize the old mafia. They refused to collaborate with non-Italians and were suspicious of those who were not Sicilian. The most conservative bosses only worked with men from their Sicilian village. Lucky Luciano saw an opportunity to switch sides when he saw that the campaign being run by Masseria was not going well. In exchange for Luciano taking over Masseria's rackets and becoming Maranzano's second-in-command, Maranzano made a deal with Luciano in which Luciano agreed to engineer Masseria's assassination in exchange for taking over Masseria's rackets. As part of an unspoken agreement with Maranzano, Masseria was murdered on April 15, 1931, in a restaurant located on Coney Island in the borough of Brooklyn. The Castellamar War was brought to a successful conclusion when Luciano took control of Masseria's gang and became Maranzano's lieutenant. Maranzano restructured the Italian-American gangs in New York City into 5 families, each of which was led by one of the following individuals: Lucky Luciano, Joe Profaci, Tommy Gagliano, Vincent Mangano, and Maranzano himself. After Masseria's passing, Maranzano called a meeting of organized crime bosses in Wappingers Falls, New York. During this gathering, Maranzano declared himself to be Capo dei Capi, which translates to bosses of all bosses. In addition to this, Maranzano favored the racket run by his own family over those run by compelling families. Even though it appeared as though Luciano accepted these changes, he was buying time to eliminate Maranzano. Luciano believed that Maranzano had more greedy disposition than Masseria, even though Maranzano was slightly more progressive than Masseria. By September 1931, Maranzano had identified Luciano as a potential threat to his power and had arranged for an Irish gangster named Vincent Mad Dog Cole to kill Luciano. On the other hand, Prami Lucis revealed to Luciano that he had been marked for execution. When Maranzano called Luciano, Vito Genovese, and Frank Costello to his office, Luciano sent 4 Jewish gangsters to kill Maranzano instead, with the assistance of Mayor Langsky and Bugsy Siegel. In the latter part of the year, Lucky Luciano convened a meeting in Chicago with several bosses and proposed the establishment of a commission to serve as the governing body for organized crime. This proposal was later dubbed Lucky Luciano's greatest innovation. Gambino and his cousins became members of the Manganos and served under Vincent Mangano's leadership as soldiers. After Masseria's passing, he allegedly made money on the black market during World War II by selling ration stamps. This occurred during the conflict. However, in 1937, he was taken into custody for tax evasion and connected to the operation of a million-gallon distillery in Philadelphia. He was sentenced to 22 months in a prison facility in Lewisburg. In the meantime, Mangano harbored a deep-seated animosity toward Albert Anastasia, the underboss of the Mangano family. This was because Anastasia had close ties to Luciano and Castello, and the fact that the Mangano family and Luciano family had competing business interests that led to intense and almost physical confrontations between the two mob bosses. On April 19, 1951, the body of Philip Mangano, the brother of boss Albert Anastasia, was discovered in the borough of Brooklyn. This event wreaked havoc on the Mangano crime family. It was hypothesized that Anastasia had been given the order for the hit, and as a result, he assumed leadership of the Gambino family, with Carlo Gambino serving as the second in command. In 1957, Vito Genovese attempted to eliminate Frank Castello, a rival mob boss, but was only successful in wounding him. Because of this event, Castello agreed to step down and let Genovese take control of the family business. Later on in the same year, it is alleged that Genovese and Gambino plotted to have Anastasia murdered, and in October of that year, their plan was carried out by the Gallo crew. After that, Gambino became the new head of the family and renamed the organization after himself. Genovese called for a national meeting of the mafia to be held in November of 1957 at the estate of Joseph Barbara in Appalachian, New York, to bolster his position as head of the organization. The meeting, which was attended by powerful mafiosi from both the United States and Italy, was interrupted by the state police, who arrested several of the attendees. Genovese was only held for a short period of time before being let go, after the rest of the mobsters fled the scene. There is strong evidence to suggest that Gambino was present at this meeting as well. Joseph Biondo was succeeded by Angelo della Croce as the underboss of the Gambino crime family in 1965. This marked the completion of the leadership transition of the newly formed Gambino crime family. On April 17, 1959, Vito Genovese was found guilty of drug-related crimes and received a sentence of 15 years in prison. Sadly, he passed away on February 14, 1969, while he was serving the remainder of his sentence. It was believed that Carlo Gambino and Lucky Luciano had paid a Puerto Rican drug dealer $100,000 to falsely accuse Genovese of being involved in drug trafficking. As a result, the circumstances surrounding Genovese's conviction were viewed as having a suspicious air about them. It is interesting to note that Luciano, one of the most prominent figures in the history of organized crime in the United States, passed away from a heart attack at the Naples International Airport on January 26, 1962. In Naples, there were approximately 300 mourners present for his funeral, and a horse-drawn black hearse was used to transport his body through the city. After that, Luciano's body was taken to New York for burial, and the permission to do so came from the United States government. Carlo Gambino took over as head of the commission after Vito Genovese was arrested and sent to prison. Gambino was adamantly opposed to the use of illegal substances, and he forbade any of his relatives from getting involved in the drug trade. He believed that doing so would attract too much unwanted attention. Any member of the family who was found guilty of dealing drugs was threatened with the death penalty. Gambino remained steadfast in his goal to protect his family from becoming involved in the drug trade, even though dealing drugs like heroin and cocaine can be quite lucrative. The Gambino family had expanded to include over 1,000 associates and 500 soldiers by the time the 1960s rolled around. Thomas Gambino, the eldest son of Carlo Gambino, married Frances Lucius in 1962. Frances was the daughter of Tommy Lucius. Carlo Gambino gave Vito Lucius a gift of $30,000 during the wedding, and in exchange, Lucius gave Gambino a share of his racket at Idlewild Airport, which is now known as John F. Kennedy Airport. Since Lucius held a significant amount of authority over airport management, security, and unions, it meant that together, Lucius and the Gambino family effectively controlled not only the airport, but also the majority of the organized crime in New York City. Lucius and Gambino controlled the majority of organized crime in New York City. The power transfer further solidified Gambino's position as one of the most influential figures in the history of organized crime. As we come to the end of this video, we can't help but be fascinated by the story of Carlo Gambino and his rise to power in the world of organized crime. Gambino's cunning and inconspicuousness allowed him to evade the law and establish one of the most potent criminal syndicates in the United States. Despite being imprisoned for only 22 months on a tax evasion charge in 1937, he continued to lead his family until his death in 1976. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you at the next one.